Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of the Manic Movie Misfits podcast. I am your co-host, Rubik's Cube.
Oh, Mr. Cube.
I decided to change it up.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
But they need to know your name.
Oh, yeah. It's Tom Skerritt.
It's Oh, wow. You're looking pretty good, Tom, for being
How old is
80
Tom Skerritt?
years old, probably.
Yeah, how old is Tom Skerritt?
Mr. Dallas.
Yeah.
Mr. Father in A River Runs Through It.
Yeah.
Mr. Viper. He is... Am I an idiot? He's 88.
88. Whew.
You look really good for being 88, Tom Skerritt. How was your experience working with Ridley Scott on Alien?
He was chill back in the day.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah. Now he's kind of an idiot, but
What's it like having a co-star that is a xenomorph? What is the xenomorph co-star experience like?
Yeah, at first the tensions are pretty high. You look at him and you're just like, you're gonna attack me.
Yeah,
but once you get used to it, it's pretty nice.
All right, that's fair. But I'm sorry to say this, Tom Skerritt, but you're not the reason we're doing this podcast episode.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Sorry, Tom. The real reason we're doing this podcast is to show off these cool new sunglasses.
No.
These are not new. I've had these a while, but
I was gonna say you've had these for years.
I've had these for years, but I just randomly dug them back out from my closet. For those that can't see, these are sunglasses with money signs on them.
Were they on,
gold glitter?
Were they not on the owl?
No, I took them off the owl.
You took them off the owl?
I know.
Since when?
I don't know. It's been tough, man.
Yeah.
The owl and I have been having our issues.
Had to fight the owl.
Yeah, I had to fight the owl, the plastic owl that's supposed to scare away geese, but actually really doesn't.
No.
Yeah. Those things never work. People always put them out,
No,
whether it's the coyote plastic thing or the wall or the owl plastic thing, but they really just don't work. It just does not work.
I was gonna say, I think around town, the ones that they had up, I think they took down a few because I saw them I saw a scarcity of them and I was like, this is not normal. Mm-hmm. So I was like dropping someone off at the Greenbelt, and I looked up where I usually saw one when we ran cross country, and one wasn't there. It was so sad.
Yeah, yeah, they're not built. They're not built to take on the geese. The geese are
they're an army. They're
like Vincent Hanna in Heat, which is the movie that we're going to be talking about today. How was that transition?
Oh boy.
That is the movie of the episode we're going to be talking about. It might take up the entire episode, this conversation about Heat. It might not. If it doesn't take up the whole episode, I do have a backup for a very Son of Sunday-esque subject. But I won't tell TJ what it is yet, in case we do get to it. So, without further ado, TJ, let's get into Michael Mann's masterpiece, or as our friend John likes to say, well, he said MMM. I like to say Triple M. This is the Triple M film, Michael Mann's masterpiece.
Yeah.
So, TJ, as we always start with these movie episodes, what is your overall thoughts, or give us something that stood out to you on this rewatch? Because this is a rewatch for both of us.
Yeah, I hadn't seen this in years.
On Heat.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I just said, I hadn't seen this movie in God knows how long, probably like 3-4 years.
Well,
at least.
Well, so you're Tom Skerritt, so you're 88. So you probably saw this in the opening when it opened up,
day,
right?
Yeah. Oh yeah,
1995 or whatever it came out in.
Oh yeah. But yeah, I hadn't seen this in years. I loved it then. I think I love it more now. I mean, I remembered most of the plot and all that, and like I remember that it's an awesome movie. But I will say there was an edge to watching it now where I was just like, I love this way more than I did years ago. and I need to visit this movie more, or just Michael Mann movies more, because, I mean, goddamn, it's amazing.
Yeah, I had the exact same experience. Before my initial thoughts on the movie were, it's good. I understand why people consider it an abnormal thriller or a unique thriller. Mm-hmm. I understood that, and I was like, okay, it's good. It's great. Then we rewatched it with a couple of our friends, Emerson and John, who the podcast members or podcast followers actually do know because they've been on the pod before. Mm-hmm. And I fell in love with this movie just from beginning to end. Between this and this movie, rewatching it, and Apocalypse Now, this year's a good year for me as far as falling in love with movies, because this film and we'll get into it, is fantastic. And those qualities that make it abnormal make it stick out and make me grapple to it more than a lot of other thrillers that I do really like. I love thrillers because thrillers are often accompanied by action, and action movies are basically one of my favorite genres. And so, yeah, I think all that combines together to make me love it as much as I do, and I think it is a perfect film. I gave it 5 out of 5 on Letterboxd. I kind of jumped the gun, talking about it at the end, but I was going to say it at some point here shortly. I think it is a perfect film, at least for what it's perfect in what it's trying to go for, and it clearly accomplishes that in every way.
Yeah.
So I think without further ado, we can get into the fact that it is an abnormal thriller. And one of the things that I wrote down here that kind of came across with me, and we kind of talked about this as a group, and we paused it once or twice, people had used the restroom and stuff, is that it goes into the individual character's background and personal life more than a lot of other thrillers really tend to do. Because a lot of thrillers, it's more of like, okay, maybe we'll give you some surface level background. He has a kid that he has to, I don't know, that he has to support, so he has to do this or something like that, or whatever. There's lots of stories like that in thrillers. But this, it's not just surface. It's actually going deeper into why the characters are doing what they're doing, what their life has been like, and it's also not a telling thing where a character will sit down for 10 minutes and say, I've had I've had whatever go on in my life that has affected me. Like, he's not just sitting somewhere and going through his resume, going through whatever. We gradually see all of the issues and the trials that the characters, that specifically, when I mean characters, I'm specifically talking about Neil McCauley, Vincent Hanna, and Val Kilmer's character, which I can't remember the name of. I can find it right here. Val Kilmer, Chris is his name. So, yeah. So that is really nice, and it also it makes the film more intimate for viewership. How did you feel about that whole bit, TJ? And also, and I don't know about you, TJ, maybe you've seen another one, but now that I'm kind of thinking about it, there really is there's not many thrillers that do what this film does, but also excels at it the way this film does with how intimate we do get with the characters.
Yeah. I mean, I think that like the way that it's able to go into everyone, I mean, I think isn't a testament for its runtime. Because I mean, the movie's it's like 10 minutes short of 3 hours or something.
That's fair.
So it has time to kind of play around in that department. That being said, for me, this movie does not feel like 3 hours. I feel like this movie is like this movie feels like an hour shorter than it actually is, which is really weird because we watched this and Predator 2 in the same day, and I felt like this movie was shorter than Predator 2. That being said, being almost 3 hours, you have time to sit down and kind of analyze characters and truly write a character kind of in more of an action movie setting. Because, I mean, most action movies or like thriller action movies, like you said, you get characterization. You get like, oh, he's this type of trope. And that's pretty much it in the grand scheme of things. Like, think of like John Wick. Mm-hmm. Like, you take that versus like De Niro. where it's just like John Wick. He's had 3 movies, so he's like had more runtime than like De Niro has. His whole characterization is his wife died. He's an ex-assassin. That's all you need to know.
Yeah.
Or with someone like De Niro, where it's like it's still an action movie, or it still has like big action movie feel at times. I mean, it takes like a good amount of time to like develop him and like say, hey, here's who he is. Here's what he believes in. Here's his ideologies as a criminal. And it does the same thing with Pacino as like the cop. And I think it's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, which is that not only do they dive into the individual backgrounds, but the individual backgrounds are actually complicated. Like, there is a lot to them. It's not like, as you said, John Wick, which is just like, as you said, his wife died, vengeance, whatever, all that stuff. His dog dies, stuff like that. But, yeah, so I think that is a really important point. And so I think when you have those backgrounds, you really start to, especially when the action kicks up around, or well, you have the obviously basically what is the opening action scene, and then you have 45 minutes to an hour, 45 minutes basically, where we get a lot of background being developed with these characters.
Yeah.
And then you have the action heat up. But when you have that background, which includes stuff like the diner scene, which we'll get to because that's a big piece in this film and is one of the most, like, dare I say, most iconic moments in movies in at least the last 30, definitely in the last 30 years.
Oh yeah, it's easy. It's easily one of the pinnacle things of like, here's how you write a scene. If you watch the Heat diner scene, it's acting and it's writing at some of its like all-time best.
Right. It's that, and then it's also just the fact that we have De Niro and Pacino in the same room, and they're like,
well, yeah.
Yeah.
Them the face-to-faces. It's crazy regardless of what movie you're watching it in.
Yeah. So, yeah, so you have all that background, and then when the action kicks up and stakes start getting higher, it really creates an illusion, and you do really kind of get lost in everything. And I think that isn't a testament to, like you said, TJ, how you thought this movie was an hour less than it actually was, because you're invested. You're really just in this illusion with them. You're in this world with them.
Yeah. And
you don't even realize it.
Yeah.
Which I think is, again, it's a testament to how well all of that comes together.
Yeah. Very few movies do that for me. Like, I think this and like Fantastic Mr. Fox, the movie feels like 40 minutes to me.
Yeah.
Like very few movies do it. Like everything else, like it's 2 hours, but honestly, for me, it feels like 2.5. Like everything feels longer than it actually is, except for this movie. Like very few. I think that's a good thing, and I like it. So
I'll also shout out, as far as creating that illusion, I'd also like to shout out the editing, because that is what Michael Mann films are known for, is their editing and the way they're shot. That you can trace that back all the way to the iconic Miami Vice show, which I've said before is revolutionary in television, because it was pretty much the first television show shot like a film would be shot. And so you can literally compare that show to, in fact, every other movie that he's made, as far as how things like that are created and made. So anyway, we talked about De Niro and Pacino a little bit, and without further ado, I think we should just get to the elephant in the room, which is the diner scene, which is what we just referred to.
Yeah.
And on this rewatch, I watched it the first time, and I was like, okay, this is good. I'm engaged. This is like, am I even living right now? Is this even a thing that I'm watching? And I still felt that way. I was like, this is literally two of the most iconic actors in the last 50 years or whatever, 40, 50 years. Like, these guys have been the Godfather movies.
Yeah, two of the greatest of all time.
Scarface, Deer Hunter, like, gosh darn, every Scorsese film under the sun for De Niro, pretty much. So I still couldn't believe it, even after the second time. I don't think I'll ever get over that.
Oh, no, it's awesome.
But from this pairing, you get this masterclass in acting. And I think what I kind of discovered on this rewatch for my first time, or for my second time watching this film, is the way the the emphasis and the meaning and the purpose behind every single second and every single movement. Looking away from the opposing character, every single piece of dialogue, the way the dialogue is emphasized, everything has purpose. It's not a look away from De Niro or look away from Pacino, or in this case, look away from Hannah or look away from Macaulay just because. There's actually a purpose behind it in setting up the tone and the similarities, the dissimilarities, mostly similarities, but the makeup of these characters and the way they interact with each other. Like I said, just that one look away or that one maybe shrug of a shoulder or kind of tilt of a shoulder is impactful and powerful. It is, I mean, what can you say except it is a masterclass in acting and, as you said, dialogue writing, because it is.
Yeah. I mean, even before I'd seen this movie the first time, that it's a scene that everyone's like, if you want to learn how to like write good dialogue, it's a scene to watch. Like, I feel like it's one of those ones, like, if you're in a screenwriting class, you're gonna watch it. It's like 12 Angry Men and stuff like that, where it's just like, here's how you write tension in a scene that it's the hero meets the bad guy, but like, it's just them talking.
Right.
It builds tension and it builds like a connection between them. Just in ways that just like it's so good because it's just like it's. I mean, and that's partially like a testament to like the people who made it. I mean, you got Michael Mann directing it, and you got Pacino and De Niro, like you just said. Who, I mean, two of the most like greatest of all time actors there are just in general. I mean, they've carried Hollywood for like 50 years, pretty much, like a piece. And
don't waste my mother effing time.
Yeah.
We'll get to Pacino's performance.
I love Pacino.
And a little later, but yes.
But yeah, I mean, two of the greatest of all time. They're awesome. And to see them for the first time face to face in movies, because I think they're in 3 movies together.
Mm-hmm. Are you including Godfather 2 as well in that?
No,
because they don't share a scene in Godfather 2, but they're both in Godfather 2.
I'm doing ones where they're face to face.
Okay, yeah, so
like truly face to face. Yeah, so yeah, because I think it's where they're face to face. It's Heat, The Irishman, and then there's one. I think it's called Righteous Kill. Apparently, it's not that good.
Okay,
which is really weird because I mean, it's Pacino and De Niro.
All I gotta say is I'm so glad it was this movie that they first met.
Yes, yeah,
because of just the quality of it.
Yeah.
And the makeup of the two characters.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, just like the idea of the plot. It's super cool, and like having two big, I mean, like guys who carry Hollywood to like leads like such a cool plot by such a cool director. I mean, it's awesome. I love it.
Yeah. We were talking about how abnormal this is, and in fact, this scene really where it is placed is kind of abnormal as well, because usually in thrillers or just a lot of movies in general, really the protagonist, the antagonist really won't meet, at least in this way, face to face till the very end or something like that. It's a big reveal. We're waiting. It's all tense and everything. We're waiting for them to finally meet up.
Yeah.
But these guys meet for the first time within the first hour of the film.
Is it really? Is that scene really at the end of the first hour?
Okay, I want to say, yeah, I think it is. I think it's either at the end of the first hour or the beginning of the second hour, but I think it's really close in there, because I was trying to keep track, because remember we paused a few times, people to use the restroom, and I think it is. I could be wrong, but I think it is. I think the diner scene is. Anyway, bottom line, it's
in the first half.
It's in the first half, and it's not what those other movies would do, because they would reserve that for the end.
Yeah.
So to see them come together is in and of itself just abnormal. Mm. The other thing I want to mention, because you kind of reminded me of this, TJ, is Michael Mann's kind of underrated at this point, because we haven't seen him for so long, and so a lot of film bros or modern moviegoers, whatever, don't really, I feel like, appreciate him as much, because he hasn't made movies that often.
Yeah.
Recently, and when you go back and watch this film, you're like, this dude is up there with the greats. Like, this film is up there with all those other great films in many ways.
It's a goated film.
Yeah, he is up there with the best directors.
I think, in terms of like film culture, I think like Heat and Collateral and stuff like that, I think they've stayed relevant. Like I still think that like Heat is in the top 250 on like Letterboxd and stuff. Like
yes,
people still watch and love this movie. Mm-hmm. Like, and I don't think that's going away because I mean, like I said, Heat is a pretty damn goated movie. But I think in terms of like just like normal pop culture, not a lot of people think of him in terms of like, hey, did you catch the new kind of like Tarantino Cameron kind of thing?
Yeah.
He kind of gets shuffled to the back where it's just like, oh yeah, I feel like even decently like basic like movie people, they know Heat and they know Collateral and stuff like that, but like I think the people or the guy who is behind all those movies is still kind of masked. It's kind of like Rob Reiner effect where it's like everyone loves Rob Reiner movies, but like to think that they're all by the same guy, it's just like, it's just a group of movies.
Yeah,
kind of.
I really want to see his name pop up, right?
Yes, yeah.
Not because obviously you're correct with the Collateral and Heat. Those two movies specifically are mentioned or a good amount, but his name specifically, I'd like to see at least up
pop
there
up more,
along with the Tarantinos. It does. I'm not saying he's better than Tarantino.
Yeah, but
I'm saying
deserves the hype.
He deserves the hype because he gave us this film, which, by the way, got 0 Oscar nominations. But you know,
I saw that
the Oscars they have some problems. So yeah, I think that's it for the dinner scene. Oh, the last thing I will say, there's a couple things I want to mention. One, TJ, you were talking about how it is just a masterclass in screenwriting. Totally agree, and I think one of the best ways to highlight that is the fact that you have Vincent and Macaulay, who are essentially just doing the showing, not telling, the forbidden thing for writers and screenwriters or whatever to do, right? Because they're literally just laying out their life. Like they literally in their conversation just list out their resumes and list out their life.
Yeah.
And normally that's boring or not entertaining or, like I said, forbidden. But the way it is written is so involving and so gripping. The way they're kind of laying this stuff out that it totally works when it totally shouldn't. So I think that's something we should definitely mention.
Yeah.
And then I will also not shout out, but this is a kind of a cool fact that I came across just throughout the last few years after I watched it and stuff like that, which is, and I'm sure you might know this too, TJ, but Al Pacino and De Niro never actually rehearsed the scene. They kind of went over lines in Michael Mann's office, but it wasn't but there was no inflection, there was no nothing. It was just monotone reading the lines. And then the only time they actually did it legitimately was with the cameras rolling.
That's cool.
While they were doing it. It is a really cool thing, and I think it really did add to it. Now I don't know what takes they used, right? Because I know they did at least 10 takes. I remember hearing conversation. It was a decent amount of takes. So I obviously we don't know what cuts were used.
Yeah.
But what clips were used, but I feel like we do get that from them.
Yeah.
And of course they're great actors, so that might be a part of the reason, obviously. Maybe might be the biggest reason, probably is, but it is still a fun trivia fact that very well could have influenced the scene, depending on, again, what takes they used and things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is the diner scene. Now we got to get to Pacino in this film.
Yeah.
Because he is he's something. He is something.
Him in this movie.
He is great in this film. He is eccentric and just weird, strange, but also doesn't take away from more of his serious moments and serious tones of the film, which I think is just a testament to, of course, him as an actor and whatnot. But I find that really interesting, and you're always transfixed on him for that reason too, because he is the only character in the film that is doing what he's doing.
Like weird.
Gets weird and stuff like that. And TJ, what'd you think of Pacino?
I love Pacino in this movie. Like I said, he's eccentric in this movie, and I think it's absolutely hilarious. But like you said, at the same time, like when he gets serious, it's still like he balances kind of like the goof with like the seriousness in like a way that works, like in just ways that like, oh my god, they're amazing.
There's so many performances where that's gone totally wrong, where people have just gone so overboard with all that quirky, weird stuff.
Yeah. And I always loved Pacino in this movie. I think originally he was my favorite performance of the movie. Still think he is. Cause like he's just so bombastic. It's just like every scene at the beginning, he's yelling something stupid as hell, but like it just works.
Yeah.
I love it. And for me, I think maybe I have to sit on it, but I think it might be like a top 3 like Pacino performance for me. Probably, I'd say yeah.
I would agree. Off the top of my head, the 3 for me is probably Scarface, Heat, and Godfather. Probably.
Yeah. I haven't seen Scarface, but I'd say Godfather, Heat, and then Scent of a Woman.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one, and I haven't seen Godfather 2. I know. Oh well, but.
The Michael
from the ones that I've seen, I would say those 3
are
definitely the ones. But yeah, he is everything so wild. I think, and he's my favorite performance as well in this film, just because of how unique he is, and how at the flip of a coin he can just go wild, or whatever, and that's also something that makes the performance great. And also like all the times that he just does not care or whatever. Like he goes to the Las Vegas sort of plant or whatever where the Friends actor.
Oh, Hank Azaria.
Where he's at, and of course he has the iconic line in there too. But where the lady or something's there, she's like, "You can't go in there." He's like, "I don't care," or whatever. He's like,
it's so good.
It's so funny right from the get go, and I think one thing that really transfixed me on his performance was his facial expression throughout it. Like obviously the dialogue was funny and all that stuff, and even also when he was serious too. Like both his facial expressions, where he was looking, and all that stuff was constantly interesting. And again, part of that is the fact that he was flipping back and forth between kind of the serious and the more eccentric and whatever sort of sides of him. But also just, you could tell when you combine that with the background that we talked about, you really kind of felt like there was an importance to whatever facial expressions he was showing to give you an insight on what he was thinking and stuff like that. Because, he was smart, had this experience, was the quirky, weird guy that he is. So I kind of noticed that halfway through the film that I was really engaged and focused on him, him facially and how he was in that regard more so than De Niro or whatever.
Yeah,
still focused on him a lot, but
Pacino was also I mean, he's half of the heart of this movie.
Yes, and we'll get to him right now because, like you said, TJ, he is half the heart and is a great counterweight to Pacino.
Yeah,
and still holds his own, obviously, because not just because he's De Niro, but still holds his own with his performance, which, like I said, is different. And it's different because one of the things that I really love about it is he really sells you right from the beginning, or not necessarily right from the beginning, but pretty soon that you feel like he could be a smart criminal. Like, he doesn't have the cliche criminal appearance and whatever. He's not like what's his name? Who's the guy with all the tattoos? Waingro. But
what?
Waingro from the movie.
From the movie. Okay, yeah. I thought you were talking about like a character from a different movie, and I was like, you're gonna have to say the movie. I don't.
Okay, but yeah, like I was saying, he really sold himself as a smart criminal, and despite the fact that he didn't have that cliche criminal appearance like Waingro does, right? Waingro's the guy with the long hair and all the tattoos and stuff like that. He really carried that mastermind vibe with him.
Yeah.
And also Pacino, as we said, delivers some great lines, but De Niro has a lot of great lines too. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite lines in this film, and quite possibly one of my favorite lines just in general, and I'll read the conversation because it's better with it. It's when he's talking to Van Sant, who's the rich guy that... Yeah. So basically it goes... Van Sant goes, "What are you doing?" And Neil McCauley says, "What am I doing? I'm talking to an empty telephone." And Van Sant says, "I don't understand." And Macaulay says, "'Cause there's a dead man on the other end of this effing line." And it's so cold, and his delivery is so perfect, concrete. He's reserved, yet you still are scared of him.
Yeah,
which is in a testament on its own, because he isn't that eccentric, very violent. I mean, of course, he is violent, but he's not loud or menacing in any way physically.
Yeah.
But the way he delivers his lines has a very menacing quality to them, a calm quality that makes you kind of afraid because of his calm, tranquil delivery and performance and stuff like that. Which is just it is just great, and like I said, really is that counterbalance to Pacino and makes his performance very notable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because it would be easy for him to get caught in the background when you have Pacino, who is being as wild as he is. But yeah, he definitely holds up his end of the bargain. He's freaking De Niro.
Yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong with De Niro. He's awesome. I think he's a good reserved performance compared to Pacino, where Pacino goes crazy in scenes. De Niro has like a nice calm energy for most of it. Like, he's menacing, but he's menacing in a way that like he's just delivering lines.
Right.
It's not like he's yelling, he's just talking, which is cool. And like I said, it's a perfect counterbalance to for the main characters, where usually it's kind of like almost the opposite, where like the like what is considered like the villain is like the kind of crazy one. He's the one who's quirky and delivering weird lines, and the main character's like, oh,
Val Kilmer, or not Val Kilmer, Christopher Walken in A View to a Kill ?
Oh God, yes.
Oh man,
yeah, something like that, where it's like a Bond villain, where it's like the Bond villain is like, they're quirky, they're weird, but like to think that like the good style character for this one is more the more outlandish and almost like eccentric one.
Yeah,
it's a bizarre shift that it's cool, and I like it. Yeah, I love it. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, there's very few times where I have as much fun as I have sort of breaking down these two characters and finding their differences, but really mostly their similarities, you know, which is their drive to, in Macaulay's case, commit crimes, and in Vincent Hanna's case, his drive to get rid of the scum and villainy and criminals on the streets. And their blinding and relentless drive to do those things that others don't, and their smarts that come with that. But so when you have that, and then seeing how they react to each other, like we said, the diner scene and all this other stuff, and how they're thinking as the film cuts back and forth between them, it does make for really interesting conversation and makes the film live on like it does now. It's not just face value of De Niro, Pacino. It's De Niro, Pacino putting in some of their, as we mentioned with Pacino, and we could say the same with De Niro too, some of the best performances of their entire career.
Yes.
And so to see that is really, it really does give each character the values that do last a long time. TJ, do you have a favorite? I was going to ask you this with Pacino, but do you have a favorite Pacino, De Niro line, or yeah. What, do you have any lines that stick out to you? I mean, there's a lot that stick out. But is there one that you like the most? I think for me, the Pacino one is the "Don't waste my mother effing time."
That was pretty good.
When he talks to the guy at the scrapyard or whatever. And then De Niro, it's the one that I think I listen to as well, because as when he says, "I'm talking to an empty telephone line," your heart just your whole body just kind of sinks and your heart just skips a beat. You're like, "Oh my gosh, this dude is just villainous in every way and is just relentless, and he's a bad dude."
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I don't know. I can't think of any off the top of my head. There's lots of great ones that, like, when I was watching, I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah. I like his remark when he's at the club too, when he says, and the scrapyard guy's friend is there, right? They were going to meet later at like 2 a.m., he said. And he gives him some details about like cars or something, the cars, right? And and Pacino's like, "Hey, do you want a Junior G-Man badge or whatever?" After that, it's like,
it's all the little quips he has.
It's all the quips. Yes, that's good. That's a good point. It is.
Make it.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
It's the lines that you don't see coming and just kind of trail conversations that just complete it. His eccentric side when he does show it. So yeah, I think now it's time to get to who we want to be our friend of the podcast and who we do like dearly, which is Val Kilmer. He's kind of our guy. We kind of have a group of guys for the podcast that are what we like to think are our homies, and Val Kilmer is one of them. You and I have said this before, TJ, and we're not alone. Other people have said that Val Kilmer had that acting potential to win an Oscar. Like, he had Oscar level acting. And to me, this is one of, I don't know how many films, but one of the not very few films, but one of the films that shows that. Because you have two of the all-time greats, and you're the third build. It's I can't remember who's first, but it's basically Al Pacino, De Niro, and then on the build, you're right there. It's Val Kilmer's third.
I think so, yeah.
And at least that's what it shows on my DVD Blu-ray.
I think when the ending credits started, I think it is Pacino, De Niro, Kilmer.
Yeah. So when you're the third guy build, and the two above you are De Niro and Pacino, and then you also commit the performance that Val Kilmer had with these two. Of course, it's less screen time, but you could really tell that this guy was holding up his own against
he goes hard.
Two of the greats, because you have a few of the other guys that get some screen time and have some time to shine, but just you can clearly tell it's Pacino, De Niro, Val Kilmer drop off. Everyone still does a great job, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
There's no weak point in this film. There may be a couple lines that are kind of sort of funny at times, but the way they're delivered, but not really. Everyone's holding their ground. But what I'm trying to say here is that Val Kilmer doesn't necessarily just hold his ground. Yeah. You can actually tell, hey, this dude is like, this guy is up there with these main two goats.
Yeah.
And doing a very convincing job.
Yeah, I mean, also I think it's just a thing of, like, at the time he was one of the bigger names. I mean, I think it was Pacino, De Niro, Kilmer were like the big three. They're the people you're going to put on the poster and all that.
Right.
Where everyone else, like, they're big now. Like, I mean, it's Danny Trejo and Natalie Portman and the guy from the Allstate commercials and stuff like that. Like, people that we all recognize and know. But, like, they're not as big as those three.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to put Danny Trejo or the guy from Las Vegas that's the voice of Apu and The Simpsons. I can't remember his name. Like, someone like that. You're not going to put them on there. Mm-hmm. But I think it's one of those things where it's like they're the big three. They're the show, or like most of the show at least.
Right.
You're here for them. Like, let's be real.
Yeah, you are here for them. That is true. But I do again want to emphasize that just because that is true it doesn't mean that these other guys like Trejo is putting in a bad performance.
They're
definitely all convincing, but
Yeah.
you are 100% right in what you were just saying.
Yeah. They're small pickings at the moment. Mm-hmm. They have yet to start their career truly.
One other line, this reminded me of, our conversation here reminded me of this. One other line that, and I can't remember the name of the actor. I'm trying to find him on the list here. But when they're having the conversation, I think it's in an empty lot about whether they should do the bank heist still. Mm-hmm. And the one guy says the action is the juice. I can't remember the name of that actor, but that might be my favorite line just because you're...
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, because you're just kind of like, what is he trying to say here? Kind of confusing. You kind of get what he's saying, but you kind of don't get what he's saying. I kind of love that duality of that line, so that might actually be my favorite line. Just want to shout that out. But
it's pretty good.
It's pretty good. But anyway, yeah, back to Val, or Guy Val. I think what confirmed my kind of hunch that he was really up there with De Niro and Pacino in this film, because I couldn't remember him too well from when I first watched it. I first watched it 4 years ago or something. It'd been a while, 3 or 4 years ago. Is his combination of violent and monotone acting, the way he displays both of that. The rage, but the way he performs in a calmer setting with more regular dialogue, whether it's De Niro right when he's at De Niro's house after he kind of has that rough night where his wife wants to stay home with the kid, and Val's like, no, we got to go out or whatever. And the morning that follows their kind of conversation, kind of individual small moments like that is really what made me realize that it wasn't just I'm wanting this to happen. I want Val to be as good as these guys because we like him a lot. But he really is
just as good.
This is good, and he is definitely deserving of, again, being third billed and deserving of being compared to these two guys in some ways, at least.
Yeah,
in the film
for his parts, he does.
Yeah. It is some great stuff.
Yeah.
The other two scenes I want to talk about is the bank shootout scene, because we need to get to that. We haven't really talked about that. And the airport scene at the end. So the bank shootout scene, which is really where the whole bank section is where the action heats up again after the background that we talked about and things like that. And it is... I wrote this down in my notes that just came off my mind when I thought of it. The first three things that I think of when I think of the scene is loud, violent, and real. Because, well, you know why it's loud and violent, obviously. But it's real because, and this is one thing that I love about Michael Mann, is he knows his sense of space. Like, he knows where his characters are. He knows where his characters are moving to. I think Collateral is another great example of this in the city of L.A., which is also in L.A. Yeah. But he knows where his characters are and knows where his characters need to move in a realistic way. It's not like... In a lot of action movies in the 90s and the 80s, people would get away with kind of placing characters and moving characters in a way that that made you not aware of it necessarily, but definitely weren't as natural or as authentic as you see these characters move in all the film, but specifically we really see it in the bank shootout scene. Yeah. I think what kind of tipped me to it was, this is a really small moment, but Val Kilmer is this when he's shot? No, this is before he's shot. So, right, they're trying to escape the cops, and he's moving from van to van. He's moving from car to car, and there's a scene, there's a moment where before and after the cut, he's making the same progression to the same spot, to the same vehicle in a mannerly time frame, and I was like, holy crap, I don't remember the last time that a film was actually like this genuine with making sense in how a character actually moves or how people actually move in a scene. Yeah. And
the continuity of it all actually makes sense.
It does. And the realism of it all and is there because of that, and also keeps you stuck in that illusion, you know?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, just for the bank shootout scene. I mean, it's I mean, it's like the diner scene from earlier. It's another scene that I think has like transcended time. Where this is more action, and I think, like you said, this is how to make a truly real like style action scene. Where it's not like crazy guns blazing kind of thing where it's like, oh, I mean, they're escaping the cops, but at the same time, there's like a sense of like, this isn't happening.
Yeah.
This never happened. It has a sense of like, oh, it feels like you're standing on the side of the street watching cops fire at robbers. There's a sense of just like, oh, this could happen. It's not just like, it's not Keanu Reeves jumping over everyone and blasting them with shotguns and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's and it's not like, and I mean the body count for it, like it doesn't show like people like getting crazy ka-chowed, other than a few. Like, I mean, like they show one guy or the guy from Monk. I can't remember his name. I don't think I ever knew the actor's name.
It's like Hank something, I think.
Yeah, the guy who's in Monk, who's Buffalo Bill.
Or no, Hank. What was I saying? Ted Levine is his name.
Ted Levine.
Hank. Yep, that's it.
Yeah, that's it. Like they show him, but like he's a main character, but like, or like a main character because he's been around since like the beginning of the movie. But like it's not like they're showing like cops specifically, like, or like they're not making it a point, like, or like, well, they kind of do. They do at times, but like,
yeah,
it's not like the big focus. It's it's almost like collateral damage. Almost, it's not like they're purposely going to show it. They show it when they kind of want to, almost.
I think to put a darker tone and a more serious sort of emphasis on the fact that this is doing a lot of damage to.
Yeah,
it's not all show.
Yeah, it's. I like it. I think it's an effective action scene that I think most things just don't have the power to replicate.
It's smooth in every manner, and I think that is also a good word just to describe the whole movie is smooth.
Yeah,
like everything is rounded and there's nothing unfinished, it feels like. And that is, of course, why we get into this illusion that you and I got into with watching it, is because there's no hiccup, and it is because of, like I said, the logical ways the characters move. It's like what you were saying, TJ, with how it was, what it was and wasn't emphasizing in the scene, and it comes together nicely.
Yeah.
I also love the gunfire a lot, just the sound of it, and I was also wondering, and this kind of confirmed it on my second watch, it sounds different than a lot of gunfire
it's a lot more authentic.
It's a lot more authentic, and I was wondering why that was, and fortunately I came across this in my research. It's because Mann didn't dub any of the gunshots. All of the gunshots all those sounds were on set, and Michael Mann was carefully placing mics close to the guns while they were shooting off the blanks. And so that made so much more sense, because one of the things that makes this sequence so good and so real is the echoes that go throughout the streets with all the tall buildings, and that made so much more sense as to why it is as real as it is. And every time I say real, someone should just take a shot. So that was a really cool trivia fact there.
Okay.
And I think another reason why it's so good and why we like it so much is it's such a polar opposite to the 45 minutes before. It's sort of like we get this background, we get a lot of calm sort of stuff, and then we jump into the action. It is vibrant, it is big, it is loud, it is everything, and it gives it an emphasis, the whole scene an emphasis, but really brings a lot of power to it.
Yeah.
Let's see, is there anything else I wanted to mention? Oh, I also want to talk about just or mention at least that it's also crazy how long it is too. I mean, a lot of other films that might have a scene similar to it would be half as long maybe, but this thing really sulks in the moment.
Yeah, it's like 10 minutes long. Almost.
It is freaking long, and
well, I think 10 minutes probably plus them inside the bank, but
right.
Regardless, it's long.
It is long, but it's not. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. Yeah. It really is. It you really do get to sit there with the actors and sort of
take it
in and understand what's going on.
Yeah.
All right. Last scene that I want to talk about is the airport scene.
Mm-hmm. The end of the movie. So this whole sequence, this whole scene reciprocates a lot of the stuff that we like about the bank heist, about the realism behind it. One of the better examples in this last part of the film is the airplanes, the sound of the airplane, and the lights that are going on and off with the airplane and on the ground as well when they land. Really is real. And then he also has that sense of space too, with where the characters are running from, like they're running across tarmacs, running to like those generators or whatever they're around. I don't know at some point, but in those small little buildings as well. But yeah, it is great. The one thing that is different though, and this is actually a moment in the film itself and is quite touching and something that for me came out of left field almost, was that subtle but important and also focused on sort of handshake that they have at the end there, the grappling of each other's hand. And I thought that was it was super powerful, and I think solidifies what we knew all along, which was that these guys are really equals. They really do treat each other as equals and respect each other, and also highlights that. And I also think it's interesting because, you know, as Neil McCauley mentions, he was kind of alone. He's been alone almost all of his life, his criminal life at least, with no one. But when he dies, he had someone there with him. Yeah.
I thought that was a nice sort of. There was some nice sort of imagery there, and nice sort of touch there with that little piece, and really wraps a nice bow on what is Michael Mann's masterpiece, or Triple M, as we like, as I was talking about earlier. So, yeah, that is Heat.
Yeah,
great film. 5 out of 5 for me. It is. Well, I mean, there's not much to say. It is Michael Mann's masterpiece. I'm so glad Mann brought Al Pacino and De Niro together. Yeah. Thank goodness, because it turned out amazing.
Yeah, I wonder if they had like anyone else in the running for the lead too. To like if either of them couldn't make it. With all the research that I did, or what I was coming across, at least I didn't do a ton of it, but what I came across, it sounded like it was always going to be those two. Is what it sounded like. There was never something where it was like, oh, it's going to be this person or this person, but yeah, it seemed to always be those two, which makes sense because when you build and write performances like these that Mann did, it makes sense why you would need those two or get those two, because it wouldn't. As much as we did talk about how great the writing is, which it is, you still need those heavy hitters. You still need the heavy hitter Al Pacino and De Niro to really solidify that totally. Because, for example, let's say he got De Niro or he got Pacino, but maybe got an actor that isn't quite as good, but puts in an acting performance that is basically on point with Pacino's, it still wouldn't be the same, because outside of the film, you feel that De Niro and Pacino are equals. So when that comes into their characters, the foundation is just rock solid, because you see the actors as equals, and then you see them placed in these characters that treat each other as equals and seem like equals as far as how intellectual they are and things like that. So I think it really does sell it completely. Interesting. So originally, It looks like this was going to be a TV show.
Yes, I did know that. Yeah.
But the pilot is called LA Takedown. You can watch it. It looks like it's only like 90 minutes or something. And it has the guy who's Yondu from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, nice. What is his name? Michael Rooker or whatever?
Yeah. Has him, and then has another big actor in it from Japan.
Huh.
Interesting. Oh, yeah.
Anyway, I will run through some Pop Quiz Hot Shot facts, which we haven't done Pop Quiz Hot Shot in a while. Because we haven't really done any movie-centered episodes in a while. But I will get through those, and then we will wrap things up. So, when Kevin Gage was imprisoned for 2 years in 2003, and Kevin Gage plays Waingro. He was universally addressed by fellow inmates and prison guards as Waingro, his character from this movie. In the director's commentary, Michael Mann told that Al Pacino improvised the line because she's got a great you-know-what. Hank Azaria confirmed it, saying that Al Pacino's unexpected outburst scared the hell out of me. That's in quotes. He just actually terrified me, also in quotes. And that his look of shock was not acting at all. In June of 2002, the scene involving the shootout after the bank robbery was shown to United States Marine recruits at MCRD San Diego as an example of the proper way to retreat while under fire. I did not know that. What I did know, though, was that Val Kilmer was thrilled. Well, I didn't know Val Kilmer's response to it, but Val Kilmer was thrilled to learn that the moment in the gun battle scene where he runs out of bullets and rapidly changes his magazine is regularly shown to Marine recruits as an example of how to perform the action properly. I did know that, and I do know that they spent an extensive amount of time with gun training, Pacino, De Niro, and Val Kilmer, and it really shows and adds to the authenticity that we've been harping about throughout the episode, and really also in that bank shootout scene. All right, we have 3 more. For the restaurant sequence where Macaulay and Hannah finally meet, Michael Mann ran 2 cameras simultaneously in order to generate a greater level of fluidity between both rivals. Since there were no rehearsals for the scene, this approach afforded both men... Oh, wait, I don't know what I blanked there for a second. Sorry. I went off into another universe. This approach afforded both men a more generous margin for improvisational experimentation. We also used that word, or variations of that word throughout the episode as well, which is how fluid and round and smooth this all is, and that does not surprise me at all, although that is very unique, but I think is a GOAT choice by Mann, and literally... what we were talking about makes him like those. That's a small example of what makes him as good of a director as he is. Is understanding that. Oh, never mind. That's it. So that is it for Pop Quiz Hot Shot. That is it for us, TJ.
Yeah.
When we'll be back, we'll be doing our usual stuff, which is insulting each other. Unfortunately, I can't punch TJ because we're gonna be back at college. But I'll verbally assault him at least, so that'll be okay. I'll get my kicks that way.
Oh boy.
So without further ado, thank you so much for listening. TJ and I are going to watch Dr. No on the big screen for the 60th anniversary. We are very surprised, as you can see. There you go. We like our Bond stuff. So, and as you can tell from our episodes. So without further ado, we will catch you in the next episode of the Manic Movie Misfits podcast. See ya.
See ya.